I read this and I think, some doubted.
Na me kenkan me busa me say ade ebinom adwen yom ntanta.
See, that's if they were Ghanaian. That's what they would say. They would say,
Sa na Ghana for mo ye mo ka
Some doubted.
Na ebinom adwen yom ntanta.
They're there with Jesus who has been risen from the dead, and some still have doubts.
Na no mo ni Yesu Kristo yi a wa sorry fear wo funu na wo ho. Na so no madwen mu eye won ntanta.
I'm thinking to myself, what are they doubting?
Na me twene me ho na mbusa me ho say edien na enwo adwen eye won ntanta wo.
Perhaps they misunderstand. Maybe they don't think that God is strong enough.
Maybe
they doubt that God is powerful enough. Maybe they doubt that God is big enough. Or maybe their doubts are about themselves. Maybe they are doubting in their ability to follow this resurrected Lord. And maybe as you are here today worshiping, there are some doubts that you have.
Na ebia ene wahia mu haya o sorry wadwim bi eye ntanta.
You know, I have learned that in Africa some doubt that they are good enough.
Na mesua mehu se ewo ebibrem ha ebinom adri mo se enti se yam so ye papa sa.
Because of a history of colonization where people have been told you are not fully human.
Na enam se abrofo bedi yen so na womo acheche se wod yen de yenye enipa anwepe.
Because of stereotype or racism.
Enam empapemu a ewo enwiase enti.
You think that you are inferior. Or maybe you doubt that you have nothing to give. That the African is blessed to receive and not give.
That
the African will always dependent on somebody else. Maybe you doubt, I am too poor. And you talk about, this is what I lack. I don't have this. I don't have this. I don't have this.
Na okasa say, oh, we na minni.
Who am I to be a missionary? Who am I to be a steward of God's mission?
Na mimpo mini hwan se mebeye onyankopon ensempakani anase onyankopon ahwesofo.
But let me ask you,
na mamimbusa,
why, if Africa has the largest Christian population, should Africa not have the largest population of those who are sent on mission?
Na se ebibrem ha ena Christopher edoso a adenti ena yenya omo a omo doso se won koka onyankopon ensempa no.
To be sent on mission across borders.
Se won be ko no makoka ensempa no
across tribal barriers.
And say yedi etwitwa ye emusia eku emu.
Across the city, across the village.
Na say ye ko kromu see ye ko enkrase.
Or maybe just simply across your street.
And now say ne krakra say
You see, when I look at and I see all your faces, I don't see people who are not good enough. I don't see people who only have something to take. I don't see people who are poor. I see a mighty army of God's people. God's story, God's scripture is full of stories where God uses someone who doesn't think they can. He came to Abram and Sarai and said, I will make a great nation, but they were old. He came to Moses and said, I will make you a great leader, but Moses said, I don't speak well. He came to Hannah. She was barren and despised. She could not have a child. And he made her the mother of the greatest prophet. And we could tell you story after story of David, of Ruth, of Daniel, of Jeremiah, of Mary, of Peter, of Paul. You can remember all that.
Yeah, I'll try. Now, you bet me I can't. And some are Jeremiah home any woman any Paul and
where God has used ordinary people to transform the world. And this is what Jesus is doing on that mountain that day. Gathering a small group of his disciples, through whom he was going to change the world. But I want you to notice the most important part of the scripture passage today. And sometimes the part of the passage that we leave out. If I were to ask you, what is the Great Commission? You might say, begin to quote scripture and say, therefore go, make disciples. But that is not where Jesus begins. As our Bible teacher pointed out, he begins by saying, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. This is where our confidence is in. This is where our faith is in. All authority. All authority. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to Jesus. Jesus is the King. Look at your neighbor and say, Jesus is the King.
ɔhene no.
I want you to look in front and say, Jesus is the King.
Ìbí sọ hwẹ́ ẹni mu anagasa Yesu.
Turn around and say, Jesus is the King.
Ahwẹ́wẹ́kyi anagasa Yesu ni ɔhene.
In the school, what will we say in the school? Jesus is King.
Wọ sukuu mu kasa Yesu ni ɔhene.
On the job, what will we say? Jesus is.
Bia kasa Yesu ni ɔhene.
At the presidential palace, what will we say?
Eti yɛkɔ bia president ne n'asuafoɔ asoɛ a deɛ na ɛbɛka Yesu ni ɔhene.
In the slums, we will say, Jesus is King.
Na bia nkurɔfoɔ tete a ɛnyɛ yɛbɛka sɛ Yesu ni ɔhene.
In the church, what will we say?
Asafo no mu deɛ na yɛbɛka Yesu ni ɔhene.
In your community,
Na mpɔtamu a wote mu.
what will you say?
Deɛ na yɛbɛka
Jesus is King.
Yesu ni ɔhene.
He didn't say, a bit of the authority is given to me.
Wanka sɛ tumidie no emu bio ɛne ɛde ama no.
He didn't say, cra, 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 authority has been given to me.
Wanka sɛ tumidie ɛno kitikiti bi ne ɛde ama no.
He didn't say, most of the authority has been given to me.
Ɛna wanka sɛ tumidie no emu bebree.